Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Gaming with me, Tony Mo, and we are here today to answer one question. Is Battlefield 1 any good? I've been playing the alpha for over 2 weeks now, and about a week ago, DICE and EA removed the NDA from the alpha, which means I can finally sit down and talk about it and show you guys gameplay. And I very much wanted to bring you my first impressions of the alpha. Now, keep in mind, this is one map with two modes, Conquest and Domination. I've only played Conquest because, frankly, that's the only mode that matters, at least when you put Conquest and Domination side by side. So there are definitely elements of the game that I haven't got to give a go yet. But the core of what makes Battlefield 1 is definitely there. So that's what we're going to talk about. And there's a hell of a lot to say about Battlefield 1. I think I want to start by very straight up saying it's really fun. I've been playing it for 2 weeks. I've played it pretty much in my spare time and really only with my brother, but I would say that we've racked up well over 30 hours at this point, and that's individually, so 60 hours between the both of us. We play it pretty much every chance that we have free time to play together. That's the only game we play, and even though it is only one map, the fun hasn't run out yet. It's a ridiculously well-designed game in terms of fun, and I think the decision to go back to World War I has definitely helped some of those fun factors. I think flying planes, dogfighting, you know, all three of the plane variants, the fighter, the bomber, and the attack plane, are insanely fun, and they're even more fun when you can play them with someone else. So, for example, the attack planes can have 2 people on them, the bombers can have 3 people in them. They're the most fun I've had doing anything aerial in a Battlefield game ever, just hands down. It's super fun to be on the back of an attack plane with your friend, you know, getting chased down by a triplane, a fighter plane, just, oh, the moments that we've had. Battlefield moments everywhere, and Battlefield moments where I expected to see Battlefield moments. Not so much the ridiculously stuff that was advertised in Battlefield 4, like C4 on ATVs, genuine Battlefield moments. Walking through the fog due to the game's new dynamic weather cycle, and seeing biplanes swoop overhead and drop bombs while you rush through a village, and walls are getting blown to pieces. Like, everything is just kind of in this chaotic element of bliss that it should be in for a great Battlefield game. It feels really good. The destruction, like I said, all these things come together, and on top of that, the icing on top of the cake in this instance, and perhaps maybe the filling, is the fact that the game looks absolutely stunning. I'm playing it on the Xbox One. This isn't even on PC, and it looks ballistically good. It does have some issues staying at 60 FPS or above it, much like Battlefield 4, but I would say the frame drops are far and fewer, at least on this map specifically. There's some serious issues when you're in a biplane where the frame rate is really rough. Hopefully they can get some of that stuff ironed out, but it's console. I don't really expect more than that. One of the biggest and smallest touches that you may have already heard about is the fact that the console version includes a field of view slider. Makes me really genuinely happy. They've stuck to their guns on what they developed inside of Battlefield 4 over the course of that game's post-release, and they have all of those wonderful sensitivity options, so many different options that are modifiable already in the alpha for console and PC users, and I really appreciate that stuff. You know, they didn't take any steps backwards. They looked at everything they improved upon in Battlefield 4, and they've thrown it into BF1. And most of it's in the alpha already, and I give them a huge thumbs up for that. The squad system, you know, again, what they developed in Battlefield 4 when they realized people want a squad system, works in Battlefield 1 in the alpha already. It's a little bit funky because of connection and disconnection issues in the alpha, but that's alpha, and they happen very rarely. Otherwise, it works really damn well. So let's talk about the core gameplay. You know, I've said it's fun, destruction is great, like the things you expect from a Battlefield game are there, and I think they're better than they've ever been, to be honest. But we have to talk about the World War I theme and how that's affected what makes Battlefield Battlefield. Like I said, there are areas where it's really positive. I think dealing with tanks, dealing with vehicles, whether they're on the ground or in the air, at least the ones we've experienced in the one map on the alpha, it's a strong point. The tanks feel a little bit too strong to me, but I imagine they're tweaking that. It's just, you know, the speed of the tanks, and really the big thing for me is the equipment and the weapons that the tanks and the planes have. They're really minimalistic because they didn't have laser-guided systems back there. It's that stripping away of all of that crazy technology that makes things feel more pure, and it means that the battle between infantry and armored vehicles feels a bit more fair. Are you still outgunned? Yeah, that's a heavy tank. You better pay attention. But it just feels more, it feels more like an even playing field if you bring the tactics and the right cards to the table when you go into battle with a tank. And the same is said for the airplane stuff. And that's also one thing I should point out, is that the aerial combat feels more like it's where it should be. There are still opportunities to engage enemies on the ground. Almost all of the planes, even the attack and the bomber, both have bombs on them, so you can do bombing runs even if you're not in a bomber directly. There are ways to influence that. But for the most part, like, the dogfights stay in the sky. I felt like way too often the jets became just an overpowered element in how they were able to engage infantry units and even armored vehicles in the ground. Things feel a little bit more separate. Like I said, there's definitely the opportunity to gain support from your bombers, but there's so much going on in the air, especially with the behemoth on this map specifically, the Zeppelin, that you need your pilots in the air to be doing dogfighting, to be up in the air engaging the Zeppelin. There just feels like a more focused purpose for people who are in planes, and I like that. Like, that whole balancing act that I thought was never well done in Battlefield 4 feels really composed here in Battlefield 1. Like, honestly, they fixed a lot of the issues I've had with Battlefield 4 in terms of balancing, and like I said, putting vehicles where they belong. Things just feel more balanced. That's all I can really say. And I think it was all too often that in BF4 I would feel like there was too many vehicles on the battlefield. Like, what's going on? Why does their team have 5 tanks? That doesn't really happen in BF1, or at least it hasn't happened in my experience. Tanks are definitely a game changer. They're really valuable to your team. I think the speed of them and the placement of the spawn of certain tanks, like the heavy tank way back at your team's spawn, make them feel much more valuable, but also you recognize how easily you can lose them. You know, you drove all that way, and if it dies, you're gonna have to wait for the respawn and drive it all the way back. It's not as easy to just get multiple tanks after spawn back into the battle, and that definitely helps balance the whole armored vehicle situation. They've done a really good job with that. Now, the core gunplay, I mean, I think DICE has always had this in a really nice sweet spot. I've always enjoyed the gunplay. Obviously, we're dealing with some different weapons here. There are still plenty of automatic weapons, and I'm gonna have a different discussion regarding the whole idea of whether or not Battlefield 1 should have just been World War II. Because what I find funny is that there are probably more automatic weapons, you know, not just including SMGs, but automatic rifles in Battlefield 1, which is a World War I experience, than there are in most of the World War II games you've probably played in the last 10 years, which I find a bit weird. Does the game still feel fun? Does it still play well? Yeah. And I don't think there are any real issues. I don't think any elements of the game are affected by these automatic weapons, but it just feels weird. It feels kind of dirty from a historical standpoint. Yes, I know the weapons are accurate, but when I have a semi-automatic, weapon that looks like a Gerwer, these prototype weapons that fires automatically, I'm just kind of like, oh, this is so weird, man. There's just a bit of a disconnect that I had there. And I think it strips away some of the enjoyment. And herein lies, let's transition into my biggest issue, is that a lot of the weapons just don't satisfy me. There's something about them. I don't really care for any of the submachine guns in the assault class. I find the submachine guns themselves to be really lifeless. They don't have much of a soul. They don't feel enjoyable. I really enjoy the bolt action stuff, whether I'm using iron sights or a scope. They're both equally satisfying. There's some great semi-automatic rifles for the medic class that are a lot of fun to play with. I really enjoy the support class, though. The support class and the light machine guns that you get to use, like the Lewis gun with that wonderful disc drum on the top of it, are really satisfying weapons. I really think they've hit a nice sweet spot with those weapons. I think there's a lot of work to be done with the automatic weapons, and at the same point, I'm not saying that from a balance perspective. They feel balanced to me. They feel like they make sense. They have range limitations. They are only really effective in close quarters and medium range situations. I just think they're boring. And I think maybe it has nothing to do with DICE needing to tweak them. I just don't care for like automatic weapons in that type of a situation in what is supposed to be a World War I environment. I prefer the semi-automatic stuff. I like having that additional range capability. And let's move to the sniper rifles while we're on the topic of range. The great thing about the recon class and sniping in Battlefield 1 is the limitations of the scope technology. Again, another positive brought on by the World War I era. We have very limited scopes. I think the highest scope is an 8x. So while you can engage people, you know, sort of cross-map, it's not a consistent way to do. We're not talking about 20x scopes like in Battlefield 4. There's not a lot of that nonsense where you just end up with 10 or 12 snipers on a team. You know, a whole squad of snipers just trying to potshot each other across the map. That just seemed to happen far less, especially in Conquest. There seems to be a really big mindset, at least for the people in the alpha right now, and this could be because they're more hardcore Battlefield players, that the objective really matters. And I think, like, I'm not even joking, guys. Every single match that I have played since I got into the alpha has been really good. Like, close matches, even when you get slaughtered, it's usually because your team was just outplayed. It isn't because half your team was off sniping somewhere or half your team was off driving tanks into the side of a wall. You know, it's just because you got outplayed. Your team had the better tactics. The commanders on the different squads were really paying attention to where they should be moving their team. Conquest just feels like Conquest should feel for the very first time to me. When I look at my experience with Conquest in Battlefield 4 and in Battlefield 3, I mean, this is why I transitioned to Rush when it was released in Bad Company. You know, the game mode just felt like it lost its luster. Like, people didn't know what the hell they were doing anymore. There wasn't really an element of tactics going on with the different squads. Things just felt like chaos. There felt like there was no rhyme or reason to why we were attacking certain objectives or defending certain objectives. Not the case with Battlefield 1. Proper communication. You know, I've had the opportunity to play the squad leader role. My brothers had the opportunity. We're looking at the mini-map all the time, which, by the way, I love the new mini-map. It pops up on the corner of your screen. You can leave it up. It's big. It's beautiful. It works really well. And it allows you to make really accurate tactical decisions for your squad. Like, okay, you know, let's go capture E. And it helps that we've been able to play one map over and over because we're already developing those strategies of, you know, C is kind of the, let's leave C alone depending on which team we spawn on. Let's go D first. None of this ever happened for me in my time with Battlefield 4, though. Like, I think that just goes to show they've reached a definite point of success in terms of PTFOing in Battlefield 1, at least in the environment that exists in the alpha. Obviously, it's going to be a different beast when we get out into the open and everyone is playing this game. But right now, it's a really, really solid experience. The fact that they are rewarding players more for playing the objective definitely ties into that. I've just had a lot of really great Battlefield moments. It's hard to, again, focus on the negatives, which a lot of the negatives for me, as I mentioned, are thematic issues. With the fact that this is supposed to be a World War I game, but automatic weapons seem so abundant, and there's just small design decisions that I'm not entirely sure about still. But overall, I'm in love with this game. You know, one map, one mode, over 40 hours already, 30 hours or whatever I'm probably at this point. I can't wait to play more of it. You know, is it the hardcore, authentic Battlefield 1 experience that a lot of people were hoping for when they said the game was going to be World War I? No, but I think it recaptures a lot of what makes Battlefield Battlefield. I think it goes back to some of the basics of why we played Battlefield in the first place, and I'm really happy about that. I'm going to be really excited to come back to the game full release and see how it fares once it gets out in the wild and everyone has their hands on it. Hopefully, the experience that I'm having here in the alpha will be able to hold fast once it's out in the wild. Trying to think if there's anything else I want to talk about. Like I said, I'm going to do an entirely separate video regarding my issues with the theme and the presentation of their version of World War I. But you put all of that aside, there's a lot of great benefits from the World War I setting. Like I said, I think vehicles have benefited massively. Most of the weapons have benefited. And I think the overall experience, you know, being able to throw two poison gas grenades in a building, pop on your gas mask, run in there as the support gunner and just hip fire someone down. Like, so many really satisfying moments brought on by the different mechanics and implementations that exist purely because this is a game that takes place during World War I. There's a lot of positives here, guys. Hopefully you can kind of see what I'm talking about. I think the big thing is going to be when everyone is able to get their hands on it in the beta. But stay tuned to the channel. I'm going to be doing a lot more Battlefield 1 discussions now that I realize the NDA has been lifted. And you can expect a lot of Battlefield 1 content from me here in the alpha. There's a lot of discussion pieces we're going to do, a lot of really detailed critical analysis of the game. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of the issues where I feel the game is still weak or could improve. But overall, 30-hour impressions in the alpha, one map, one mode. DICE, keep it up. You guys are headed in a really great direction. It makes me really happy and puts a huge smile on my face to be excited to play Battlefield again. If you guys have any questions for me, feel free to throw them down in the comment section below. If it's something I feel I'm going to answer in a future video, I'll let you know. But if it's something I can answer, I will definitely do so. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.